Welcome back, Terrible Warriors, to Meet the Makers, where we meet the makers that make the games we like to play, but we've already met these makers, and it's not met the makers. It's got an extra E in there, so maybe this time we'll have a chance to meet more of them, and we'll learn even more than we ever thought was possible with Panny and Aled here. Welcome back. You liked it so much, you came back for more.
Yeah, right.
Honestly, it was, you sent out your press releases for Were-Woofs, and I read this going like, well, this is just delightful. This is just the most charming, fun, it's the perfect setup, elevator pitch for a one-shot for a group where you're like, I don't know what to do tonight. It's like, let's be people who are now dogs. And that's it. That's the whole deal. And I've been running live streams with the Dungeons and Do-Gooders where we've been playing like live one-shots that are designed to be very quick to pick up with no preparation, like your one-page RPG kind of stuff. And I saw this like, well, this is the one I want to play when I go back to streaming these one-shot games again. This is perfect. So tell me a bit about Were-Woofs and how it came to be, and also I guess what we should expect if we're actually going to play this game if we've already backed it on Kickstarter.
So I'll try and keep the spoilers out of it for anyone in terms of the adventure at least. But to understand Were-Woofs, you kind of really have to go back to Mutants, which is why it's kind of part of the same Kickstarter, as it were.
Yeah, and Mutants is a precursor. It's a game that's already come out a little while ago, and it's another style. Like, is it also a zine?
It's fully compatible with Were-Woofs. They exist in the sort of same universe, and the rules are cross-compatible.
Oh, excellent!
The idea being that you can either now that we have Were-Woofs as well as Mutants, you can either be a cat or a dog. But the way your rules work are slightly different, so they're kind of classes now in this sort of greater.
So I had this thought that cooked in my brain with the stream that I could run a session of Were-Woofs, then a session of Mutants, and then a showdown session with a few players from each, where we blend it. We could do the great team up of the century.
What I would actually do is I'd run it the other way around. I'd run Mutants first and then Were-Woofs, because there's actually an adventure in the back of each book, and they do carry on from each other.
Okay,
so they're linked adventures.
Terrific.
Mutants came to be because basically I was doing this risograph printing course, and Riso is how we actually print it. It's the technology we use to print it with. And they were kind of like, oh yeah, just bring something that you want to print, because then we'll print a few copies of it while you're here. And I was like, oh crap, I need to be there in a week. So then we were at lunch at work, and I was just sort of talking to Panny and a couple of the other guys. I was like, I need to get a game ready in a week. What do we do? And I was thinking like Cats with Superpowers was the first pitch. And then I didn't even come up with the name Mutants. I have to say that was, I think, Cole. We don't know. We don't remember.
Lost to
someone shouted
the sands of time.
And I was like, thanks, that's mine now.
Might have been Cole.
It might have been Cole, yeah. But could have been you, yeah. Could have been Panny.
It's a bit of a Schrodinger's cat thing, isn't it? It exists in it was both my idea and not idea at the same time.
Yeah, it's everybody's idea. So anyway, it sort of devved out pretty quick, and then sort of launched it for the first Zine Quest as kind of an initial project, just because it was like, I'm very much in favor of this idea of, whenever people are like, oh yeah, how do I get my game published? And I'm like, well, the first thing you need to do is just like make a Kickstarter and sell it, and make it a small thing, and just do the thing. Just do it. Stop asking questions about how I should do it, and just actually
a real small project with a humble amount of money that you need, and just enough to just get it out to the handful of backers you have, and then throw the rest on itch, and then you're done.
Yeah, exactly.
And then you move to the next one.
Yeah, and it's just something is now complete, and that's nice. So Mutants was basically cats with superpowers, but otherwise just like normal cats. And the rules have these very specific instructions for the GM, because players will do it every single time I try and run it. which is, can I pick that up and carry it? And it's like, well, no, you're already carrying one thing and your mouth is full, so actually you can't talk.
I feel like in a world now where the Stray video game is out, it's an easier understanding of what you can and cannot do as a cat. Because, you've got your mouth and your wits, and that's kind of it.
That's it. Yeah. I mean, I guess you've got a superpower too, but they're all a bit rubbish.
Well, and in Stray, you have a robot drone that's flying around doing most of the heavy lifting for you. So,
Stray's come at a good time. I had someone I was talking about mutants and werewolves at a party I was at recently, and she was like, "Oh, is it like Stray?" I was like,
It could be. It totally could be. And I feel like a game like that kind of helps in the theater of the mind when you're playing a tabletop with cats, understanding a little bit more of like, leaping from pipes to pipes and getting up into the top windows and then coming around and not thinking about going across a landscape like a biped or going across like a human, but actually thinking like, as a cat, how you would get in through all the little nooks and crannies of a building or a landscape.
No, exactly. But then that's the funny thing as well, though, is that in terms of getting non-TTRPG people playing, that was kind of another goal of mine, because I have a lot of friends who've always said, I'm kind of interested, but, maybe they're not really interested in being sort of like, a dwarf cleric or like,
But it can feel very overwhelming. I've tried to introduce like Dungeons and Dragons to non-TTRPG players, and their eyes just glass over. And they're just like, there's so many numbers, there's so many choices, there's so many rules, as it appears, at least on the character sheet, that you go like, and you can see their brains shorting out. That's what I love about, these smaller, like easier to like little, like they're like morsels of games with the zine games, and they're just easier to, the rules are easier to consume. They're not as overwhelming. They fit on a handful of pages, and it's a lot easier to get you up and going, so you can experience what the gameplay is like. And then when you go to Dungeons & Dragons down the road, the setup is a little bit more involved, but the actual gameplay, the collaborative part where you're just role playing, it's the same. And it gets you past that like early learning curve and lets you relax into just telling a cool ass story.
No, that's exactly it. And I think the other key thing to kind of note on that as well is that because it's basically just set in a standard world, and you're a cat, and there's cat memes, but beyond that, there's no real kind of knowledge investment. Like, I think we all sort of, as like massive nerds, we forget that there's actually like a huge buy-in in terms of like D&D, because it draws on all of that fantasy kind of like knowledge base that you have.
All like these assumptions about how magic and divine and different monster types and those are just not assumed. Like, you can't just assume everyone has that. I'm having the same. I'm about to be playing the One Ring, and like Lord of the Rings is so heavy with content that I have to be very mindful to the podcast that not everyone's gonna have this background, and I need a foil at the table who doesn't know Lord of the Rings or Star Trek or these like touchstones that for me are like secondhand. They're another language, but for someone on the outside, it got me thinking when you told me, you should start with mutants instead of werewolves, and how a lot of people use Dungeons and Dragons as a gateway game to the hobby. And I feel like it should be the other way around, is finding a good indie game as your gateway game to ease you into this style of play, because a chunkier game like either Vampire Masquerade or Dungeons and Dragons or like old Mutants and Masterminds, or like you go to those, or a Pathfinder, it can be so overwhelming that you just go, well, this is just not for me. I'm never going to learn it. It's like learning music. I'm just not going to learn the instrument. And it does the whole hobby a disservice, where you eat someone in with a nice zine from Panny and Aled, play Mutants and get a nice easy game in, get that game under your belt, and now you've played a game, now you're a gaming group, and now you can ramp yourself up if you want to bite into these big ones, if that's even your thing. It's not. I like sampling all the ones, but it can be a thing where you can end up tuning your friends off of ever playing again if they have like a really bad first impression with a game that is just incomprehensible to them versus an easy game that you could just pull out of your pocket at the cottage and you could just play it impromptu with no preparation.
I think especially if they've not necessarily, like, the one truism, right, is that the best game to introduce someone is one that they're excited about playing.
Yeah.
So, like, if you've got a friend who's like a massive goth and super loves vampires, then Vampire the Masquerade is probably a great game to start with because they're going to be excited about the concept, right?
Yeah, if they don't give a crap about Lord of the Rings or fantasy or Game of Thrones, like, don't start them on Dungeons and Dragons. If they're all into Marvel cinematic stuff, find a superhero game. Like, just go with what they know.
That's it.
I think it is really interesting, like, people's pathways into the industry and how that, say the industry, I mean, just playing TTRPGs.
Well, almost everyone I've talked to in the UK, they got their start with Games Workshop. Is what it comes up over and over and over again. It started there. It started with Warhammer. It started with war games. And
the most popular one, right? Like, it's usually just the most popular one that everyone's heard of because that's what you're interested in, right? Because you hear the stories of people doing the thing and it's fun. So,
yeah, I wanted to play. I didn't have the money to, but I had all my friends around me playing it. And the reason I got into Dungeons and Dragons is I didn't need to spend anything on it. I could just I get the book and I'm done. That's my one and done purchase. But the same thing with like Magic the Gathering and Warhammer. It just became like I just couldn't keep up with it. But
I held off on Magic for so long because I was like, people kept saying, "Oh, do you want to play some Magic?" And I was like, "No, I don't want to learn how to play because I know if I get into it, I'll get really into it, and I know it's expensive, and I don't want." And now I'm
What are we doing? That 30 quid Masters draft.
Yeah, just let's buy 3 packs and see if we open something good. 30 quid, that seems reasonable, actually. That's not too bad. Right?
To come off your thing, Panny, there does seem to be these pathways in where, at least for a lot of us who are similar age, the early days was very like rules heavy. It was kind of that nerdy bit of getting into. It didn't matter if it was Games Workshop or it was D&D, if it was Magic. The point was that the rules were incomprehensible, and that was kind of like the inside like secret society language that you had with these games. But as we've gotten older, like, again, a common thread I've gotten with a lot of these Meet the Makers is the longer you play these games, the more you don't want to keep learning new rules every single time you pick up a new game. And the more you just want to find a game that is streamlined and easy and just get to the good stuff that we've come to love, which is that moment around the table of sharing a story and getting that pop at the table where something really awesome happens that you end up talking about for months to come. And if the rules are getting in the way of that, you just start chucking the rules out the window. And now I find like a lot of new games that come out, you know, from folks like you, the rules are so they part like the Red Sea out of the way to allow you to just get right to the story as fast as possible.
Yeah, that's kind of the point with Mutants and Were-Woofs was like, particularly, you know, like with Were-Woofs, actually, it was a little bit tricky because with the rule stuff, like Mutants is quite easy because it's just a simple D6 dice pool thing, and then you get a few bonus die for doing cat-like things. Because I kind of wanted to encourage, interact with the environment as if you were a cat, right? Like have a nap, like just say,
push things off the shelf,
put things on, do all that sort of thing, and you get some bonus die, right? And obviously, you start with 9 lives. With dogs, I kind of wanted to do like something different, like something that sort of exemplifies that change between the duality of man and dog kind of thing. It was a bit tricky, but the core D6 dice pool works the same way. But with dogs, instead of having like, because you're werewolves, right? So the idea, behind werewolves is that you are a dog that used to be a person.
You have the mind of a human.
You have the mind of
in
a
dog.
Yeah. And the body of the dog you inhabit, your dog breed, obviously they're quite varying, so they have like different skills. Obviously, a Pomeranian would have like different skills to like an Irish Wolfhound, right?
Yeah.
So the Irish Wolfhound might be quite intimidating. The Pomeranian might be sort of like quite cutesy.
Yeah, one's going to be able to just walk into a coffee shop and no one's going to worry.
Yeah,
exactly, the other's going to cause like a full first responder response.
That's it, yeah. But then obviously you have your old job as well. So you have like skills based on that. And so the idea with this is rather than having those little bonus die that single spend things that you get with mutants, along with a superpower that doesn't really cost anything, you have this tracker. So the more times you do use your human side, the more bonuses you get on that dice roll. And if you go too far, you don't even get bonuses anymore on your dog stuff. And then the more dog stuff you do, the more like a dog you become. And your behavior in the game is kind of like going to be to a certain extent directed by that, because the better you are at doing human stuff, the more human stuff you're going to want to do. And then you're going to play it more human or more dog, right?
It reminds me a bit of Animorphs, of like when they transform, they have to be so careful not to be the animal that they've become, or they just lose themselves to the instincts of whatever they've turned into.
Yeah, we're pushing it as very much a family-friendly game, but I really wanted to make it a body horror game.
Yeah.
It's like you are a dog.
For a young adult novel series, the Animorphs got rough. It went to Cronenberg territories with some of the descriptions, but. I suppose there's nothing stopping a playgroup from taking their werewolves into whatever edgy territory they want to go in. But it's kind of hard to when you have tail wags as your like health meter on your character sheet.
Yeah, tail wags per second. Yeah. So the other thing is dogs can kind of gain and lose life. So you kind of lose life more easy than maybe mutants, or you don't start with as much. But you can regain it. Like when things go well for you, your tail wagliness goes up. But then it's also a bit of a kind of brutal, death spiral if things start going wrong, because your tail wagging just goes down and down and down.
Which makes sense for me. Like it always is. Like when a dog starts losing their interest in a scene, like it's kind of hard to like boost them back up. When they're like, no, I'm done. It's time for me to go home. No, we got to keep going. Where a cat, like I kind of love, like, okay, you're not humans as cats, but you were humans as dogs. But it plays into that idea of like dogs and humans evolved very much symbiotically together, and cats just domesticated themselves because it was convenient once agriculture came around, and we had like no say in it. And so it does play off of like the cats and the human world. Like cats don't care, and they never have, whereas the dogs, even though like they're werewolves in this, but like the dogs are like, they care so much. They care so much about the human world, they can't help it. I kind of like that. It plays off of those themes.
It's one of those things that it's the core change in the Mutant second edition actually is because initially in Mutants their sort of charisma stat was just called fucks, as in how many left to give, and it was the one consistent piece of feedback we got from basically everybody was that they were sort of reading Mutants and they're like, oh yeah, this would be a great game to play with my kids and my family. But
too bad about all those F-bombs. Yeah.
So we were like, right, okay, yeah, we probably need to change that for the second edition and maybe aim it more at the demographic that sort of does like it rather than the one that I thought might exist, which was just me.
Sometimes you got to make the game that you want to play, and sometimes you got to make the game that you want everyone else to play that you can also enjoy.
No, that's it. On the other hand, though, now we have like about 10 copies of the sweary Mutants left. So anyone who has
this is like a collector's thing. This is going to go for auction 20 years later.
Right? So when we make it big, like, you know, when I win like 20 Ennies,
like those old animes before they got edited out that had a little bit more adult content before they shifted it to the children's hour slot.
Those sort of like ropey, sweary copies of Mutants.
The After Hours edition.
Exactly. Maybe we'll do a second edition of Were-Woofs with all the body horror.
Yeah, well, that's what it is. Actually, it's going to go the other round. You'll have the Were-Woofs edition that fits with first edition Mutants. That's all swears, all horror. And there you go. You just have these like two parallel realities of your friendship is magic on one side and Adult Swim on the other side. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I feel like the other side of friendship is magic is probably not that, but yeah.
No, those are dark sides of the internet that you want to make sure you have your VPN turned on so you don't get put on on some kind of watch list. Yeah. So how has when I last talked to you, you had Andromeda, and now you've got Were-Woofs, and Were-Woofs has successfully been backed on Kickstarter. How has it been with since we last talked with Andromeda and now getting to Were-Woofs, and how has the business been? How's it been going? Because it's fun to keep meeting you with successful backing after successful backing.
So yeah, really well. We've got a studio now, so we have our own printer now. That's kind of the key difference. So we actually do all of our production in-house on our zine stuff, which is pretty cool.
Very cool.
Because it just means we can actually turn things around a lot quicker and with a lot less risk.
And you have this like dedicated space too that undoubtedly helps with the focus and the direction as well.
Yeah, no, things have been going really well. I mean, it was really Salvage Union which like solidified us.
Yeah.
Andromeda was amazing and did like much better than we'd anticipated, and then we followed that with Salvage, which did insanely better than we anticipated.
I am looking forward to that. We didn't talk about Salvage Union, but I did back it, so I am looking forward to getting that game. Do you want to give me a little a quick, because we skipped it here on Meet the Makers, a quick rundown on what Salvage Union is, because it's available for purchase, correct?
You can pre-order it currently.
Pre-order it, okay.
It's available via Backer-Kit pre-order. And yeah, Savage Union is a post-apocalyptic mech tabletop role-playing game that's got really quick, easy, and accessible mechanics. It just uses 1d20, and you play as a band of salvagers who go through the wasteland, picking up scrapping together mechs, and fighting big, evil corporations as they do so.
Yeah, it sounds like it is a pro-union game and uniting the workforce. Yes, it's just a little bit, but it has some really fun themes, and it's been interesting to see, like, from Andromeda, which was a mothership complement product with all those like cool little glow in the dark stuff, and then Salvage Union, this like mech kind of gritty, taking back the means of production with mechs, the game. To like Mutants and Were-Woofs, like you're really like, you got a wonderful spectrum of games here too to tap into a bunch of little pies.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think it's just representative of our varied interests as well, right? Like,
Yeah, I think so. We tend to get bored quite easily. Yeah. I think it's part of it. Like we like a lot of different distractions, and we're also influenced by a huge variety of different games.
Oh,
also,
sure, yeah.
Just from listening to Justin then, I just thought we missed the tagline for Salvage Union, wouldn't it? It should be seize the means of destruction, right?
You know what? Like, there you go. You got it for the second edition when you put it out, or any expansion packs you put. And if I end up running Salvage Union, you just gave me the tagline for the podcast. So thank you. I'll put it. I'll have a little credit. Tagline brought to you by Aled.
We've still got the retail release.
We've got the retail release. Yeah, we can put that on the ads.
Yeah, the live action Netflix adaptation.
Yes, yeah. That can be the subheading, right? Yeah. For the anime series.
Yeah, it'll likely be canceled partway through the production of the second season, but that is just how it goes. So
that's free Netflix shows.
I mean, to be fair, if we get one of our games turned into a Netflix show, I think by that point we've made it, and I don't care.
If you do one episode, I'd be happy.
Yeah, no, that'd be amazing. Yeah.
So Were-Woofs is the current one, and if we're picking it up, and I'm bringing it to my game group because our GM has canceled and they're not showing up, and everyone's panicking about what game they are not going to play. But good news, they're all dog owners. So I've brought this game in my back pocket. What should we expect if we're going to play a game of Were-Woofs tonight at the table?
Basically there is an adventure in the back, and it's like pretty well detailed. So it follows on from the Mutants one, but it can be played standalone. So I wouldn't stress it too much if you've not played through the Mutants one. But yeah, basically everybody picks a dog, everybody picks a job, and it's kind of a mystery game. Like it's mostly set around that. Same with Mutants, really. So it's about basically finding out why this happened.
There's a conspiracy. There's a big question mark over everything, and you got to sniff out the clues.
Yeah, and it's kind of just exploring the neighborhood, and I guess really like the setup is it's an opportunity to make a load of jokes and act out the things that you've seen your pets do and stuff like that you think is funny. And it's just, I mean, that's mostly what happens whenever I run it, is that's what people do.
Yeah, I had that years ago. We played a quick game of Pugmire, and that's the kind of game you ought to bring out if you've got friends who have dogs, and all they want to do is just recreate their dog in the game and play through it again. And that's it. And it's all right, cool. I mean, that's easy for me. Let's go.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean it's just basically it's going to be like a 3-hour adventure with lots of puns. It's set in Golden Laboratories, or Golden Labs.
This is a game where puns are not just anticipated but expected.
No,
and
it's actually a key part of the gameplay. I tried
it is a cornerstone of the artistic endeavor happening here. The duality of dog and man and puns. Those two things, you need that. Yeah.
So you go and you investigate this thing and you speak to the other animals. Don't want to give too much away, perhaps on the story. Don't want to spoil it for people. You basically go investigate and try and figure out what they have to do with it and why you are dogs. There is technically a planned, perhaps third one. We'll see. It's something I really want to make because I actually have pet rats. Not cats or dogs.
Yeah, I used to have pet ferrets. Ferrets
are amazing.
You need to get that those exotic animals brought in with rabbits and hamsters and gerbils and ferrets and budgies and.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, the next one sort of I've got a title for it, but I don't know what it is yet. But it's called Rataclysm.
Excellent.
And it's about rats. So, and I was thinking the rats one could be because then the idea is that you can have a mixed party and they all have like kind of the different powers. So obviously the dogs thing is that they have jobs, right? Because it's dogs with jobs, and so they have that, and then they get bonuses on their duality thing. Cats obviously just have like superpowers.
Yeah, cats with powers, dogs with jobs. Rats with hats.
No, rats basically is just it's probably just going to be a straight OSR game. So rats get equipment, right? Because they've got hands.
Oh, it's all dungeon crawling. So the sewers, of course.
And it's sewers, right? So it's just sewer crawl.
And you're just getting into the walls, you're getting into the subfloor, and you're dungeon crawling in some poor schmuck's flat, and you're just wrecking all their wiring.
Exactly, right? So then the tagline, one of the lines I use consistently in both Mutants and Were-Woofs is just reminding people, you don't have thumbs. Because people are like, oh, yeah, can I open the door? It's like, no, you don't have thumbs. Like, how are you doing this?
Oh my God. Now I just want to play this rat game like it's a game of Morkborg where you have like 20 rat characters and you're just throwing through them one after another. But you got the giant rat family that you can just keep pulling new rats from. Unlike the cat game where you have 9 lives, you just have 20 million rat characters that you can just keep rolling in through. And you just almost play it like a Three Stooges slapstick where they just things just keep happening. Rat traps going off and cars running off, and they just play it. That's all. Anyway, I was just watching Ratatouille, and Ratatouille's big thing is like how big the rat family is, and it's just this huge rat commune that moves around, and the rat nest. That's brilliant. I was trying to run in my head like, what would this dungeon? There you go, OSR. Yeah, that's really funny. That's really funny.
So and it's basically the idea that eventually, sort of just keep going as long as people are interested in playing them. I'll probably keep writing them.
Carrier pigeons in 2024. Throwing the goldfish down the toilet in 2025. You just keep it going forever.
I've got a few titles. I've got another good one after Rataclysm, which is Zombies.
The colonies collapsed, but that wasn't the end.
Exactly, right? Yeah, no, literally, that's actually just the plot, right? But you don't necessarily play as the bees. Maybe you play as like other insects.
Annihilate the pollinate. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and then and then I thought like if I just get stuck, I'll just do one called The Birds.
Yeah, just birds. It worked for Hitchcock.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, exactly. So just do The Birds. That's kind of we're in-house. We're loosely calling it the Animal Collective. Like I say, the story's kind of plotted out a little bit. Obviously I played it with some friends and stuff like when we were playtesting Mutants, so they're actually quite excited about Were-Woofs. Which is nice because they're like, oh yeah, no, I've actually been really excited to play the next installment.
When I pitched that to the Dungeons and Do-Gooders, we have like a little backstage channel where I just keep throwing ideas of games that we could play on the stream, and I just mentioned Were-Woofs. They were just like, stop, you've got me. The pitch is over. You don't need to say anything more. We'll see you in October. And
you son of a bitch, I'm in.
yeah, exactly. You had me at Woofs. And
Yeah,
that's it.
yeah.
So, and that was the same way when the email came in. I immediately actually, like, my partner's not a tabletop player and doesn't really understand what I do half the time, but I showed them this and they're like, oh yeah, I want to play that. And like they got it, and they got like what was being presented here of like, you're dogs with jobs. You used to be humans. You got a mystery to solve. This sounds great. When can we play? And
it's funny you say that, actually, because we've noticed this at like conventions and stuff, when particularly in the early days when we were just the two products we really had were like Were-Woofs and Shadow of Mog, the post-Brexit RPG. And we'd get people come over looking at Mog, and they'd be talking to Panny about the game. And it's like, obviously, it's relatively kind of like crunchy post-apocalypse, like, OSR game, really. And their partners would often be kind of like just looking bored. And then they just pick up Mutants because it's just got like cute cat art in it, and just be flicking through. And then we would kind of like, we've accidentally come up with the perfect thing. It's like, the sort of like the crunchy games for the crunchy partner, the casual games for the partner who doesn't really care too much about games, but it's like, oh yeah, cute art, that's fine. Yeah. I'll do that.
Yeah. No, and it's one of those, like, if you want to play a game, but you don't have quote unquote gamers over for the night, like you've got a couple of options you can pull from the bookshelf that are easier to digest, that still give you that satisfaction of a really cool story. And you don't know, like, maybe you introduce someone to one of these games that you can ease yourself into, like Mutants or Were-Woofs, and then they get the itch and they want to learn a little bit more, and you can ratchet up that like gateway, and maybe Salvage Union might not be the first one they play, but it might be the next one that they play after you work your way up.
It's like that thing, isn't it? It's what's it? Murder mystery parties are like the gateway drug for LARPing, right?
Right? Yeah.
I love that as a funnel. Like, start with Mutants and then play a mech game.
Well, I had it's a defunct game now, but it was being worked through as like a beta. I had friends who were working on a game where you were puppers in mech suits, and you were going from planet to planet battling like evil cat cyborgs. And
where are my testicles, Summer?
Right? So I'm not saying that you could take your dogs that were human, that are still dogs, and maybe never get to be dogs again, but find a way to survive in the Salvage Union universe in their own specially constructed mech suits. I'm not saying that that's what they could do. Just saying it's within the realm of the imagination.
In the realm of possibility.
Yeah. I mean, without saying too much, we have been discussing.
You're out there with your fellow workers, and you're out there, and then a rival company comes in, and then they come to a stop, and the hiss of the steam and the canopies open up, and inside they're all just mangy dogs, and you're like, cut, and we're done for the week. Come back next month.
Thingy as well, though, but I don't know if you've noticed, but Andromeda is set in theory in the same universe as Salvage Union.
Excellent.
Just earlier on, like I think in theory all of our universes are. Like,
it's all part of a shared
yeah. And we kind of
absurd IP.
We put like little Easter eggs in here, there, and everywhere in terms of like things that you might not notice probably, but we kind of like try and link them all together somehow. Even like the old school D&D stuff is kind of, I think we put a couple of eggs in, haven't we?
Yeah, no.
Yeah,
you just let out all the ley lines that have connected all of your games to it. Exactly.
Yeah. No, exactly. Yeah, that's the thing, right? Yeah. No, excited for Were-Woofs. I think it should be out. Our deadline's February, because we wanted to give ourselves a bit of extra time, because next month I am super stacked with making sure that Salvage Union goes off to print. So that's kind of the main thing. But then after that, I will be just running playtests on Were-Woofs and making sure that it's good to go. And then we'll run print and distro and get it out in time for the next scene quest.
So you will let the dogs out in early 2023, and while we wait with bated breath for these games to come out, where can we continue to follow everything that you're doing and stay up to date with both new announcements and updates on the current projects and stay in tune with this growing immersive shared universe experience that is all of the games that you have put out?
The Leyline Press cinematic universe.
Yes.
Phase 1. You can go to www.leyline.press, and if you sign up for our newsletter there, you'll get the most up-to-date updates. And you can also follow us on Twitter and Instagram and Facebook, all at Leyline Press. Those are the main places to find us. Yeah.
All right.
You'll find me normally down the pub.
You will.
If you live in London, anyway.
Bump into all sorts.
Yeah, right.
You're out there at the bar. You got all your pamphlets. Anyone want to play a game? You're just handing them out.
Anyone want a game? This one's about cats.
You're just in the back, like Strider with the hood, going. That one's always in the back corner. You want to go play a story.
And ironically, we did actually play a pickup game of Shadow of Marg in the pub once with two people we'd never met before, because they were asking, "What do you do for a living?" And then Panny cracked out a copy of Marg, and they were actually intrigued enough to play it. And then I think we were there for about 3 hours.
It was drunk time. Could have been.
That's incredible.
It could have been 6. We don't know. But they left feeling, I think, relatively.
It was as I was saying, in terms of like your first role-playing game experience, Shadow of Marg was technically theirs, and Shadow of Marg was like a horrible game. It's like an anti-game. It's like an anti-role-playing game almost.
It's like starting someone with the first edition of Paranoia. It's just very strange. It's a very strange experience. It's going to kind of skew all future encounters with the hobby. I've always loved that, though. I was at a friend's party and was explaining like what my podcast was about, and they had like a theater background and they had like a writing background, but they'd never really they knew of something like Dungeons and Dragons, but had never really given it much more thought to find out exactly what it was. It was just this mysterious, nebulous thing. And as I slowly described like what we did on the podcast, they were like, you could just see like their minds light up with this like new way of playing, and they just wanted to know more and more and more, and we happened to be at this friend's party. They did have like a shelf of games on it, and like Morkborg was up there. It was the brightest one on the screen, and they're flipping through the artwork, and they're seeing and there's just this like revelation that just started to wash over them. They're like, yes. I love that. I love being able to introduce folks from the outside of the community to these games, and then folks from inside this community to games that they wouldn't have considered because they're stuck playing that one game that they've always been playing for 30 years. I used to run games at a restaurant in the before times, and I had a group show up and they've been playing the same like West End Star Wars game for like 32 years. That one, like those like open D6 Star Wars, that's it. They've been playing that one. And then when they heard about this like DM and Dine program, they wanted to come over and they sent me an email, and I showed them like all these other options they had, and they wanted to try something new. And it's just, I don't know. I'm kind of addicted to that, like sharing and opening up minds and exposing people to new stories. So thank you for giving me another opportunity to expose folks to another wonderful game that you've put together.
Well, thank you.
Welcome. Thanks for sorry, I'm just struggling how to
thank you for exposing me.
Thank you for exposing me to other people.
Yes, across. Yes, exactly. Yeah, that's how it was.
Yes.
That's where we'll end the interview. I'll just fade that out from that laughter, from that awkward moment where you wonder, why did we say yes to this again? And then just let that ... run into the extra music. Thank you again, Panny and Aled from Leyline Press, for joining us for a special bonus episode of Meet the Makers. You can learn more about the games that they have for offer, including the recently kickstarted Were-Woofs, by visiting leyline.press and by following them on Twitter at Leyline Press. On our next episode of this very feed, we will return to and conclude our session playing Cult Divinity Lost. Flight 191 will finally reach its destination, and the truth that Aiden, Autumn, and Blue have been seeking will reveal itself. For now, follow us on Twitter at Dice Warriors and stay up to date with all our happenings. Come join us on Discord and hang out with us. And if you like what we're doing and you want us to do more, consider supporting the Terrible Warriors by visiting our Patreon page at patreon.com/terriblewarriors. Our theme music is by Epic Game Music. My name is Justin Eacock, and I'm the host and editor. Until we find ourselves back together again at the Terrible Warrior table, thank you for listening. Be good to each other.